You've heard of the 300 Spartans. You know the story. You've seen the movie. But here's what nobody talks about. In 1897, 21 men held off 10,000. Not 300. 21. They received a message that morning telling them no reinforcements were coming. No help. No rescue. No miracle. Not one of them ran. This is the Battle of Saragarhi, the most insane last stand you have never heard of. But before we get to the battle, you need to know two men, because this story belongs to them. The first is Havildar Ishar Singh. Havildar, the equivalent of a sergeant? Not a general, not a nobleman, not someone history was supposed to remember. A career soldier from Punjab who had spent his entire life in uniform and ended up commanding the most boring posting on the frontier. A signal station. In a village nobody had ever heard of. He had one rule. One thing his men said about him in every account that survived: he never asked his men to do anything he wouldn't do himself. That rule was about to be tested. The second is Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, the signalman, 21 years old. His job was simple: relay messages between Fort Lockhart and Fort Gulistan, two British forts miles apart in the mountains that couldn't see each other directly. Every morning, the same routine. Check equipment, polish the mirror, send the daily status report. All quiet at Saragarhi. On the morning of September 12th, 1897, Gurmukh sent that message at 8 a.m. All quiet at Saragarhi. At 9 a.m., everything changed. To understand what happened next, you need 30 seconds of context. This is the northwest frontier, the border between British India and Afghanistan. A mountain corridor that the British needed to control, and that the local Afghan tribes had absolutely no intention of giving up. For decades, this border had been a war. Not the kind with declarations and treaties, the kind with ambushes, raids, forts that changed hands. The British had built two forts here, Fort Lockhart, Fort Gulistan, miles apart. Unable to communicate directly, between them, Saragarhi, a tiny signal station. Not a combat post, a communication post, which is why only 21 men were stationed there. Which is why, on the morning of September 12th, when 10,000 Afghan tribesmen appeared on the horizon, there were only 21 men to face them. Gurmukh Singh saw them first. The same hands that had sent all quiet at Saragarhi 1 hour earlier were now sending something very different. Saragarhi is under attack. 10,000 tribesmen advancing, requesting immediate reinforcements. The reply came back within minutes. All available forces are too far away. The other forts cannot be left unmanned. No reinforcements will be coming. Ishar Singh read the message. He folded it once. He looked at his 20 soldiers. They were already looking at him. They had all seen the tribesmen. They had all read the reply. They all knew what it meant. Ishar Singh spoke, not a speech, not a battle cry, just this: "We are soldiers of the 36th Sikhs. We will show them what that means." Not one of them ran. Not one of them argued. They simply picked up their rifles and waited. At 9 a.m., the tribesmen rushed the fort. The 36 Sikhs were deadly marksmen. Every shot placed, every position held, every bullet made to cost as much as possible. The first wave broke. The tribesmen pulled back. Smoke drifted across the courtyard. One soldier checked the rounds he had left, counted them slowly. Another quietly passed a water canteen down the line. Nobody said, "We're going to survive," because nobody believed they would, but they had held the first wave. And that, for now, was enough. Above it all, Gurmukh Singh was still sending. First wave repelled, holding. The men at Fort Lockhart read those 3 words in complete silence. The tribesmen came again, and again. The 21 Sikhs held. Positions rotated. Wounded men kept firing. The line held. The tribesmen pulled back a second time. One of the younger soldiers, he couldn't have been older than 19, sat down against the inner wall. Not surrendering, just sitting. He looked at his hands for a moment, then he stood back up. That was the only rest they got. The tribesmen changed their approach. They set fire to the brush surrounding the fort. Dense black smoke filled the air, covering their movement. Under the smoke, they moved to the one section of wall that wasn't fully defended. The section near the signal tower. The wall was breached. The fort was falling, section by section. Ishar Singh pulled his remaining men back to the inner wall. As they ran past him, he stopped. He turned around and stood in the doorway, alone. Not because he could stop them. He knew he couldn't stop them. But his men needed 30 seconds to get through the gate and lock it behind them. 30 seconds. That is what Havildar Ishar Singh gave his men. 30 seconds. The gate closed. Ishar Singh was gone. Inside the inner walls, the remaining defenders used their last ammunition. One by one, they fell, until there was no sound from inside the fort, except from one place. Gurmukh Singh had not stopped sending. While the fort fell around him, he documented every moment. Wall breach near signal tower. Enemy entering outer fort. Havildar Ishar Singh holding doorway. Men retreating to inner wall. Inner wall under attack. Ammunition running low. Defenders down to final positions. They watched a battle they could not reach through a signal machine. Word by word. Dot by dot. Every message from Gurmukh was another punch they couldn't block. And Gurmukh kept sending. Because someone had to tell the story. Because the men who died below him deserved to be witnessed. And then, the tribesmen reached the base of the signal tower. Gurmukh Singh sent his final message. The fort has fallen. All defenders down. I am the last one. Requesting permission to take up my rifle. He replied with one word. Granted. He packed his notes carefully into their leather pouch, folded them, set them aside, picked up his rifle, affixed his bayonet, and then Sepoy Gurmukh Singh fought from that tower until the tower went dark. The men at Fort Lockhart watched through their spyglasses. They counted. 40 tribesmen fell to the last defender of Saragarhi before the signal light went out. The last message from Saragarhi had been sent. Part 7. The Aftermath. When British forces retook Saragarhi the following day, they found the bodies of 21 Sikh soldiers, surrounded by over 600 dead tribesmen. 600 from 21 men in 6 hours. The tribesmen, despite taking Saragarhi, had suffered such devastating losses that when they attacked Fort Lockhart and Fort Gulistan the next day, they were turned back easily. The 21 men of Saragarhi had saved the forts they were built to protect. All 21 defenders were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, the highest honor an Indian soldier could receive at the time. In the British Parliament, the story of Saragarhi was read aloud. Members stood and applauded. In India, September 12th is observed as Saragarhi Day. Every year, still. Here's what I keep coming back to. Gurmukh Singh. At 8 a.m., he was bored, sending a routine message, polishing a mirror, probably thinking about breakfast. By 3 p.m., he was the last man standing in a fort that had held 10,000 tribesmen for 6 hours, and his first instinct was not to run. His first instinct was to ask permission to keep fighting. Requesting permission to take up my rifle. Same man, 6 hours apart. That's not heroism you're born with. That's a decision you make. And that 19-year-old soldier who sat down against the wall between the second and third wave, who looked at his hands for a moment and stood back up. We don't know his name, but we know what he did. And Ishar Singh, who stood alone in a doorway to buy his men 30 seconds, had one rule. He never asked his men to do anything he wouldn't do himself. In the end, that rule cost him everything. The Spartans had 300 men, a narrow pass, days to prepare. The 36 Sikhs had 21, an open communication post, 9 minutes of warning, same result. So the next time someone tells you what you have isn't enough, remember Gurmukh Singh sending all quiet at 8 a.m. and permission to take up my rifle at 3 p.m.? Same hands, Same man, different world. Remember the soldier who sat down and stood back up. And remember that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply refuse to stop doing their job. September 12th, 1897, 21 men, 10,000, 6 hours. Subscribe to Lost Chronicles, one forgotten story, every week